Okay.
Okay. All right. I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America, to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right. Well, first of all, let me just say to everyone here, everyone on the board, everyone in the administration, teachers, parents, kids, I hope you all have just an incredibly happy, safe, and well-deserved holiday coming up. I know it's been tough, and hopefully 2022 will be the end of the pandemic dumpster fire. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
so moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Anything anyone wants pulled off to discuss? Any discussion, just a general discussion of it? Anything from anyone? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay. All right. Board president and vice president's reports. I really have nothing to say. Like I said, I just want to make sure that, I hope everyone knows how much we appreciate them, both employed by the district and serviced by the district, because we really, when I listen to other districts and what's going on, what they're fighting against, what they're, all those things, we really have a tremendous family here. And I just like to say thank you to everyone. We do have, I don't know if we had something to go into executive session, but we will need to go into executive session. So we'll stay tuned for that. Howard, do you have anything?
No, you summed it up. Thank you to everybody on the board, and to everybody, every parent, and everybody member of the district, and the taxpayers who float our boat, more or less. So thank you. Happy holidays.
Very good. All right, Laura.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. Just a couple of items. You'll see that it has superintendent, assistant superintendent discussion around the director of facilities 2. So we know that our Mike Ragusa is retiring, and we wish him well in his next journey of life. And now we're looking for his replacement. So our recommendation is a replacement with a director of facilities 2. And Elliot can speak more about the rationale behind it. And then we also like to discuss sort of the salary range that we can post to replace this position. So Elliot, did you want to talk a little bit about just director of facilities and ideas that you're kicking around?
Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot to bring up yet. I know Cheryl pulled the civil service list. There's a pretty deep eligibility list. It is the position that Mike is vacating, so it seemed logical to replace in kind. And so we have to go through the process. It's the director of facilities title is a little bit different than our other civil service titles in that it is a state title, not a county title. So the county does administer the list and the test, but it's done on behalf of New York State. So we have eligible candidates from all over New York. I'm sure a number of them will opt out for location as they don't want to commute from the Buffalo or Ithaca regions. But we'll see. We have to unfortunately go through a really deep list just to see what our local feedback looks like and see if we can generate a viable list of interested candidates and then go from there. So, what is currently a 6-7 page list could water down to a page or 2 once we get those canvases out and back. So it's going to be a little bit of a process, but yeah, we just got to work the process and see what comes out of it.
Thank you. And the salary range we're recommending is $75,000 to $95,000. And wondering if there were any questions about the rationale and the salary. So,
Anybody?
And if we have your,
What was Mike's salary?
85,
What was Mike Ledous's
85,000.
salary? That's when he retired. That was his salary, correct? Okay.
Correct.
So
Approximately.
do we know what he started at? You know, when he was appointed?
That I don't know.
You see, that could have bearing on to what you should post at in starting level position.
Right, we'd also have to take into account the salaries of the people that he would be overseeing.
This is true. We also want to look at the salaries in the region, which we have, you know, the range that we recommended is, you know, in the ballpark of Director of Facilities 2s in the region. It's also, you know, when we canvass, we need to post a range because people are allowed to say no based on salary. So even if the range is rather wide, we're not committed to the high side or the low side, but we want to tell people. So if the range is, you know, 75 to 95, if somebody says, I'm not going to take a job less than our canvas, doesn't mean we're required to offer the job at that number.
And there's nobody in-house that either qualifies or can somehow become qualified.
So we don't have anyone that's currently, we don't have any current employees on the Director of Facilities 2 eligibility list as it stands.
Okay. Do we want to entertain if there was someone that could get to that level, or is it just out of the question, whatever the training or whatever is entailed in that?
So we have, you know, we have leadership in the department currently that would be subordinate to Mike's position right now. If we wanted to examine what a restructuring would look like, we would want to augment that person's civil service job title and skill set with another position to meet the need. I'm not in a position right now to offer a recommendation in that direction, but if the board is interested in what that might look like, we could certainly dig deeper into it.
My theory, well, and concern is that, and I know it's a state civil service title, and that's fine because that's what I'm familiar with, at least was familiar with. Things might have changed, but I don't know how much. So if we had somebody, well, let me step back. If we had somebody in-house that was equated to take I don't know if the state, when they give this exam, I don't know when it was given last, and I don't know when the next one is scheduled or if it's scheduled, but I'm wondering, do they give a promotional exam from, say we had somebody in-house, you understand what I'm saying, Elliot? And
yes, sir.
we equated them for a promotional to take. And then possibly you could go off the promotion list instead of going off the general list.
Yes, sir. So what that would look like for us is we would have to, upon the next issuance of an examination, the district would have to notify the county and the state that we intend to offer a promotional exam and we have qualified candidates that meet the minimum qualifications. Then they would be given a different test number, but the same exam. And we would be able to pull from that. It would basically be similar to a preferred eligibility list because it would be just for internal candidates and they would be able to jump ahead of, as long as they pass and they're reachable, you know, we'd have to have, in order to certify that list unto itself, we'd have to have 3 qualified candidates. If we don't have 3 qualified candidates, which most districts don't, especially one our size, you might have 1 or 2, and then you can put those folks up against the open competitive eligibles if you wanted to orchestrate it that way, in fairness. So it's really the district's prerogative. The issue right now is that I believe, and Cheryl, maybe you know specifically what the issue date of this list was. I think this list is like 2 years old or somewhere in that ballpark. So what we can't do is we can't have an interim or a provisional person in-house take the position because the eligibility list does exist. Now, if we exhaust the list, so if this 6-7 page list is entirely people who have no desire to work in Millbrook, then we could explore a provisional appointment contingent on passing and being reachable on the next exam. So it may be like a back
I
pocket
understand.
thought, right? So I'm sure you know how that works. But some of the folks here may not understand the civil
That's
service
true.
pieces to that. We
Right.
could explore a stipend of an interim nature for an in-house person to get us, to bridge the gap to the next appointee. And again, the other thing that we could do is if the district is interested in some homegrown talent, we may want to look at what a restructure would look like in a preparation of that next exam. So effectively going without a director of facilities in the short term, meeting our needs in a different way, with the understanding that we may have a candidate or two that would be eligible for that promotional examination if we were looking at talent in-house, so to speak.
Or if you canvass the list and nobody accepts it, that's another way to try to get the in-house,
Right,
the
exactly.
next
If we
list.
blow the list out, nobody wants to come here because it's too far, it doesn't pay enough, it's not where they want to be, they don't like how I look,
Right.
whatever the case, that's fine. We would then have that option to go provisional, but we cannot open that door unless the list is exhausted.
Correct.
The only other
Elliot-
way would be to change the title, right?
I'm sorry, I heard two different voices.
I was saying the only other potential would be if you changed the title we were hiring for.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. If we're looking for director of facilities, they come in 3 levels, a 1, 2, and a 3. The 1 is the more fundamental, most hands-on, less administrative. The 2 is right in the sweet spot in the middle, and the 3 is usually your bigger districts, your busier teams that have a lot more happening, a lot more moving parts. It's much more administrative work, less hands-on. So the 2 seems to fit our needs. But again, David, to your point, if we wanted to step out of that director of facilities lane and get more, perhaps examine what 1 or 2 working supervisors might look like instead of a director, for example, that's something that other places would look into. Like I said, I'm not in a place to recommend that right now, but that would be the alternative if we were going to go without.
But I thought the original, and this was, before all of our time, I think, the original thing was that you had to have, that's why they ended up promoting Mike into that job, because you had to have a director of facilities. Is that not the?
It's a little cloudy. So in 2015, they unified 57 disparate or comparable job titles around the state to make these 3 director of facilities titles, right? And the rationale is someone needs to do the work. So there are certain things, whether it's oversight of actual activity, administrative duties, and reporting to the state. So somebody has to be the AHERA liaison. Somebody has to be the person that enters in the fire inspection information every year. There's somebody that has to do X, Y, and Z things. And that's what the director of facilities job titles were created to address and unified to address across counties, across the state. Like I said, the cleanest way to do it is to have someone step into that role in the same capacity as Ragusa is vacating, but we could explore what it looks like to piece it together otherwise if we didn't want to have that same title in place. So it's more of somebody's got to do the jobs. It's usually one person in that capacity, but there's always alternatives if we need to go that route.
I mean, I think the message from the board was, and I'll leave it out there for anybody to clarify it. We need the nature of that job to be more focused on the future, and not just, we got a hole in a pipe, run over there, and we need someone that can start setting, more, I'll call it more criteria for success. And to me, and just my opinion is we should have a director of facilities that is that second, at least that second layer. I think that person is going to need capabilities that don't exist today, or if they exist, not being utilized, to do things like scheduling and planning and scheduling of preventative maintenance and And, even this stuff that you've already started with, getting contracts in place with people to solve problems for us. I think those things are important. And from my standpoint, I'm looking for you to tell us or tell me how you think it should be. And, we know what's gone wrong, where there's been issues, that kind of stuff. But, I'm assuming, since we've put you in this new role, that you have a plan in mind. This is the way facilities and operations should act. This is what they should do. And the structure that executes that should be more up to you. Of course, we have to figure out, can we afford that, all those things. But to me, I'm looking for a recommendation. Now, I'm putting that out to the rest of the board because that's just one person speaking.
I don't want to jump in if anybody else wants to chime in. So, I'll say this, Perry. The fact that there is an eligibility list for that position, I feel like it's our due diligence to canvass it, and just see what comes back. I think at the end of the day, we're looking to build a team that's going to be the best team for Millbrook. That team is currently myself. Mr. Mullins is our head of maintenance, and he's doing a fantastic job at keeping the team on track and getting work done. And even just in the short time that I've been working with the team, John has really stepped up and handled business in a really fantastic way. And we want to add a third piece to that puzzle, right? So I think we have the eligibility list. We can canvass the list. We can interview off the list. If we don't feel that, for all the good that it does, civil service can also be a little bit restrictive. And if we go through the interview process and we feel like we're not in a place where we're getting the type of people that can meet these needs, then we can re-examine the structure of the team between myself, Mr. Mullins, and what this third player would look like, and perhaps explore a different organizational structure. But I feel like it's worth a look.
Yeah. Does anybody have a problem with, that being our next step in figuring this out?
I would leave it up to the administration to know, where I come from, you try to promote from within, but if you can't, leave it up to them to know if there was someone in-house that we really wanted to push forward and try to get in that spot, or if there was, 6 pages worth of, people who might really fit well into the role, So I trust the administration's outlook there.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I just wanted to add, because of what Jennifer just said, the other piece of this too is the next person we get may not have the same skill set that Mike Ragusa has. And so they may have skills in one area that we don't currently have. And it may mean that we can still boost up somebody in-house in a different capacity to have a complementary relationship with the new person. So I think there might still be an opportunity for some internal growth, even if it's not a full-blown promotion. But yeah, let's see what we can, let's see who comes back to us and make the best decision for the team.
Okay. Unless anybody else has, anything to poke on that. Yeah, go forth, Elliot.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Elliot.
All right. Laura, anything else?
2 more items, just an update on our COVID-19 and remote. So as everybody knows, we made the call to go remote last Friday due to rising COVID positive numbers and ever increasing close contact numbers, as well as staffing shortages. And so we went full remote until Thursday, and we hope to resume in person on January 3rd. The numbers right now, we had 2 positives today, 1 yesterday. We are up to 16 positive cases in December, 6 adults and 10 students, and a total number of close contacts for the month, 96. And really, the chunk of those close contacts came in the last week, last week, the week of December 13th, total of 5 positives and a total of close contacts 54. So as the numbers were rising, we were trying to implement test to stay because we know in person is best for our students and for our staff. But we hit a place where we were testing to stay, and at the same time, another COVID positive. We were alerted of another COVID positive, which created another wave of contact tracing at the end of the day. And so we made that hard decision of going remote. Not popular with everybody. Others were very happy about it. It's always a difficult decision to make. It's never easy because often this divides a community, and that's never our intention. But in the end, we knew that this was going to keep our children and our staff healthy and safe. It was also a call on Friday because we didn't want another wave of COVID positive and close contacts. We wanted to, on a Friday, we wanted to preserve the winter recess for people and their holidays. Many of the folks who are close contacts, their quarantines would have ended right before the holidays. So there was full intention in making this call for a Friday. Some folks wanted the call a little earlier. Sometimes it's not possible. We've been planning for a remote for almost 2 years. When it happens, we can't predict that. So we just do the best we can. So for those who it's a hardship, I'm sincerely sorry, but it's just a decision we needed to make. And we will keep the community up to date on how we're going to resume in January. The hope is that we all are in person in January and we move forward through the winter and the spring. But again, it's unpredictable.
Would there
Or do
be,
we want to just mention publicly too that we're doing a testing clinic just to, try and screen and hopefully catch any positives before they enter the buildings?
Yeah, thank you for that reminder. So on January 2nd, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 12, the administrative team will be hosting a COVID testing clinic. So for any families, staff members who want to be tested in preparation for our in-person, we welcome you to join us in this. We will definitely be sending out a survey to see who's interested. And we will also be sending out reminders if folks wanted to participate. And I also want to just send a shout out to the administrative team and the nurses. Everybody showed up, whether you were serving meals in another building or you were nasal swabbing in another building and testing. I mean, everybody just did what they needed to do to try to stay in person. But then there was a point that it was just not sustainable anymore. But this team is stellar, and we couldn't have a better team. If we, I couldn't even think of a better team to be here in this crisis. So thank you all.
There's really two things. One is, I keep hearing that we do test to stay to test or test to stay or something.
Yeah.
I've never seen it like, you know what I hear people talking like, what do you mean? Millbrook has test to stay or stay to test? We need to make that like abundantly clear that is an option for parents when they're put in these closed, like quarantine stuff, or close contact or whatever. I'm losing track of all the terms, but I think we need to make a big deal out of that because I really don't think it's ever gotten out to parents as much as it should that test to stay is an option.
Well, every family who's called, you're right, we should make it more public, absolutely. But every parent that's called the test to stay is talked about. It's an option. Families can have a test to stay or they can quarantine. So we always have that conversation, but you're right, it's not as public as it should be.
Yeah, it should be.
It's also fairly new, Perry. And I think that's part of the piece too. It wasn't until recently that we were even able to do it in Dutchess County. One of the things that is very difficult with test to stay is that some of these cases have, 10 contacts. We get a couple of cases, on the same day. Test to stay. It's also dependent on the available numbers of tests. There are some nuances, so it's a little bit hard to just read a memo. We can absolutely do more communication. It's a little hard to read a memo, so it is much more efficient when we're able to tell people and answer their questions
Yeah, no,
when they're actually being quarantined.
and that's one of the reasons I'm bringing it up here. I never quite know how many people are going to listen, but they should never have to call us and go, oh, hell, there's a test to stay. We should be, even if it's on the front page of our website, just, by the way, test to stay is an option. And I get it. I mean, I know how much this takes to do. I'm not sure who's doing the testing on New Year's, whatever it is, New Year's Day or the day after New Year's Day. But
No, Perry, I just want to say that now that it is January 1st. It is New Year's Day, so we have a little lead time for families. It's January 1st.
okay, so yeah, and again, I know what a hardship this thing is to do. And if we can't, then we shouldn't even, sort of allow it part of the time. The other thing is we really need to do 24 hours note. I mean, I know snow days, we can't do it. We wake up in the morning and figure out whether we can go, but we need to look at 24 hours as a minimum of, we probably, by the time we made the decision, or the decision was made on Thursday, we probably should just said, send the kids on Friday. We'll start on Monday. I know we were trying to beat a risk, but, on one hand, we're helping them because they can go off to their vacation. But on the other hand, we're hurting them because, they're saying they can't find people to do this. I mean, maybe Friday should have been a snow day. And that way people wouldn't have to worry about it, or at least not all of them.
All right, I would suggest, I mean, sometimes that it hit the fan and it could be a really bad day, but I mean, I would at least say to maybe shoot a warning shot to parents when you feel the walls kind of caving in and it getting a little too much of, hey, we're getting to the point, we're in yellow stage right now. If we hit red stage, we're going to be remote. And that could be a day or two beforehand, but at least you're giving them that warning shot of, this is very possibly, going to happen in the next couple of days. But to say, just roll it till Friday, I don't know. I mean, that kind of defeats the purpose of what they were trying to avoid. I mean, I get both sides of it, but, one recommendation I was going to say before I forget with the test to stay is, I mean, really, when you're talking to someone, it's a lot of information you're giving the person. And there's a lot of people giving that information. So if we could have like a link of frequently asked questions or whatever it might be that we can email to any parent or any child that's being quarantined, as far as what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do and test to stay, I think that would clear up a lot of questions even before it happens. For example, if they are quarantined, their test to stay, they still can't do any sort of after school activities. So, a lot of parents aren't going to know that going into it. But if we have something we can send them, because, they get the phone call, thousands of things are going through their mind right now. They're probably not even listening.
So
If
true.
we follow up with an email as far as a breakdown of what's allowed, what's not, and what you discussed, I think that not only puts everyone on the same page that's making the phone call, but it gives the parents more information after the call.
Yeah, Chris, that's a great point. And just something I want to say in case there are people listening who maybe want a little bit more of a full picture. Test to stay isn't available for everyone who is a close contact. If you are not able to isolate from the person who is COVID positive and your exposure continues, test to stay actually wouldn't be available in that scenario. So there are some cases, that have happened over the course of the past few weeks where we weren't able to offer that option. And that's where, we want the messaging to be very clear. And that's what makes like a blanket communication a little bit confusing for some people because it isn't available in all cases. But I definitely, point well taken. I think the idea of like a follow-up email, FAQ kind of thing is good.
And maybe we could even do, it seems so long ago, but we did a Zoom and we walk people through quarantining and just sort of getting people used to the language. So maybe we need to do that as well. Test to stay, test out of quarantine, all of those things that we're just learning as well and trying to implement in our district. So maybe we can talk about that with the nurses team.
I think
on the website would be helpful.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. Because whenever that was done about a year ago, maybe, it was so well received, and the nurses, there was a nurse available to answer questions. And in addition to the test to stay, there's also if a communication is going out, there's also for individuals in quarantine, the test out of quarantine early. So I don't think many people know about that either.
Laura, if you do it, I would recommend to record it on Zoom and post it on all of our social media sites, as well as the Facebook, our front page of our website. Because a lot of people may not go on to listen, but once you're impacted, you want to know. So they have their fingertips.
Okay.
That's true. If you're not in that situation at the moment, you might understand it and listen to it, but you don't remember. Yeah. I want to say thank you also publicly, Laura. I know you chipped in at the cafeteria and all the other things that everybody chipped in with. That was great. I also wanted to say thank you for making this testing available on the first. I know personally, I've tried to find some at-home kits for family members, and there's none to be found in Westchester, in Dutchess. I mean,
The CVS across from Adams had 30 kits this morning.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, and they probably that. Why didn't you tell me this morning, Perry? But I want to, I think everybody knows my stance on getting these kids in school, and I want them in school. And I wasn't happy, but in hindsight, looking back now, realizing that, the impact of it and just finding more positives in this school and more positives, even in my personal circle, I do think it was the right decision. And I know the timing was a big thing, but I think in the end, when people look back, they're going to realize it was a good decision that, it just had to be done. So thank you guys for all the scrambling. I'm sure, half of which we don't even know about.
Thank you.
Is that it, Laura?
And lastly, milk. So since we went to remote, we have milk that we would like to donate. We have 875 half-pint chocolate milk and 500 half-pint white milk, and we would like to donate it.
To me.
No, me. I'll split it with you.
To both of you.
That's a whole lot of milk.
Yeah, I think there's enough to share with everyone.
Those expire, when do they expire? I think
12/28 and for the chocolate milk and 12/30 for the white milk.
Yeah, so I mean that I asked Laura to bring it here tonight so that the board could have input on it. Basically the milk is going to be spoiled or past the date when we come back to school. So I just put it out to you guys whether that's acceptable or not.
Would we normally go through that much milk in 5 days?
No idea.
I'm just curious. It seems like a lot. I know we have, but I just thought I'd ask the question. I mean, I'm okay with doing what we need to do.
It could also be because there's meal pickup right now, but it might not be the volume as when students are in school.
Well, that's
so like
pickup, right?
Yeah. So like each day that goes by, the volume is, much less than what we would be going through if students were fully in school.
Where are we going to donate it to?
Did you say, Howard?
Where do you want to donate?
Holly suggested a food bank of Hudson Valley. I don't remember where we did last time, but that's her recommendation.
Good recommendation.
Now, so we're keeping enough people need the meals over next week? We're going to keep enough milk to fill that?
No, we provide meals while students are in session.
Oh, I thought we were still doing the breakfast things. No?
No. No.
Okay. Does anybody on the board have with us donating that milk?
Yeah.
No, please do.
Okay. All right. There you go,
Better.
Laura.
Thank you. That's all I have to report. Thank you for your support.
Caroline? Anything?
I don't have too much other than we had some committee meetings. We had our second safety team meeting. We went through troubleshooting some of the technology, and then we also had our first wellness committee meeting. We broke into groups and we were able to start with some of our different wellness initiatives for the year, which was really exciting, and we will keep that work going. Other than that, everything will be in my report in the first meeting of January.
Very good. All right. Any questions for Laura or Caroline or Elliot?
Oh, I just had one. I assume we're gonna, once the children resume in person, then the screening form will probably be daily. Is that correct?
Say that last part, Chris. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Once the students return in person, I assume the screening form will be required daily by the parents?
We've been doing it on Mondays only.
Right, but given what's going on,
Mhm.
that's seems like a natural consequence. Just my input. I mean, in your email, you mentioned several children that had tested positive had actually been at school several days before.
Mhm.
So just to be very clear about that, it wasn't until after they tested positive that there was like oh, by the way, so-and-so had some sniffles and didn't really think it was a big deal and they went to school kind of thing. So it was nothing that we were informed of because we would not have had a student knowingly with symptoms in the building.
Of course, but that's what I mean. If you have to complete that form and you're paying attention to the form, it's just a pause to say, oh, my child actually does have a runny nose. Maybe I
Mhm.
shouldn't send them today.
Yeah, and these very mild symptoms that we're seeing, like runny nose, headache, in some cases, like a mild sore throat, we're not necessarily seeing some of these cases start with like the heavier symptoms of fever and whatnot right now. So we really need to be just conscious of mild symptoms and that they could very well just be seasonal cold or, something like that, but they could also be symptoms of COVID.
Right. Yeah.
So you're suggesting, Chris, possibly for us to consider reinstituting the 5-day screener
Given
as we move into January and possibly pull back again like we did when things become better.
I mean, otherwise it's not, that would be functional and actually based on some data, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Rather,
Thank you.
yeah. But that's your call.
Thank you.
Elliot, do you have anything?
You're on the mute.
Sorry, I'm all set. I guess like Caroline, I'll have my report for the first January meeting.
Okay.
The only thing I'll share is that we had about 4 or 5 architectural firms walk the buildings, and we expect to have a good turnout for our proposals. So I'll let you know in January.
Good. Good. Okay. We'll move on to old business. Discuss the gazebo. Do we have any folks with us?
Elliot, did you want to discuss any of the questions that were listed?
So I did provide the documents that they requested. They did, based on our last conversation, they offered up or they put in a FOIL request for the quotes that we received for modernization or restoration and the quote for demolition. We also shared the survey responses from the community at their request. There were a number of other follow-up questions that we're just not in a place to discuss, at least to answer. but they asked, there was a question about, can the Friends obtain a 99-year lease of the gazebo from the district? Can they purchase it from the district? And there was a question about the president of the American Country House Foundation's offer to provide a class for Millbrook High School students in surveying. When he surveys the gazebo, again, we have not given permission for anyone to survey it, but there was a gentleman who offered some sort of programmatic advantage to our high school students. And they sent a follow-up for discussion on that just this afternoon. So I just sent that out to Caroline for review. Again, I don't even know if we want to entertain that piece, because I don't know if we want to entertain this person doing survey work for us. So a lot of these conversations are just contingent on what the board wants. I feel like we need to discuss with legal counsel any of these options, but first, does the board even want to entertain them? That's the question.
I mean, I think the first and foremost thing on my mind is, have they been successful in finding funding? Because, I mean, we can do all the, surveying and all the, things, but if there's no funding to basically repair it, I don't know what else. I'm assuming they're applying for grants, that they're talking with, tribute gardens, but we need a status on where are they on that. I mean, selling the gazebo to me, unless they're going to put it on the back of a flatbed and, take it. I can't even, we'd have to put that up for a vote. It just seems like,
It says and land, Perry, so that's not what they mean. They mean the purchase of land, which we had said that would take a lot.
Yeah.
I think at this point we kind of need to see if we can allow them to do or get a quote, or have the school get another quote, because we basically just got one up front. So in order to give a realistic figure as far as what they need to save for, and I don't know where the inspection comes in from there, and then it's securing it until something's done. Those are the three, I think, David, you can chime in if you'd like, but those are the three things I think that are pertinent, at least to give them answers on, so they know what direction to go in.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think any sort of lease or sale to them would be off the table for now. And I agree that we have to know where they're at for funding, because there's a lot of churn here, and we want to make sure both sides are moving forward to make it happen if it's possible at all.
Any lease would have to go through state ed, and any sale,
Yeah.
you probably have to have a public vote for the district to sell it. So, it's, I wouldn't even say off the table. I would say really not feasible.
And I assume we would have to vote first to even put it on the ballot. I personally wouldn't be willing to vote to put it on the ballot unless I knew with certainty they had all the funding, and even then it would be a question. I just don't know.
Well, and the leasing thing would still mean that somebody have to put it together, restore it. So that's not change anything. All right. Well, I mean, Elliot, how difficult would it be for us to get the second estimate? One that's done by somebody that legitimately looks at the gazebo, looks at the foundation of it, the entire structure, and figures out what it would cost to restore it and make it safe.
I mean, so here's the deal. We can get quotes. I get a bunch of quotes. They're not going to be apples to apples, unfortunately. Different if we're looking for vendor quotes, vendors are going to offer you different packages of what they feel the best approach would be. My recommendation, kind of echoing what we talked about at the last board meeting, would be to have the architects and engineers do a full assessment with a baseline construction cost estimate. And that way, they don't have a dog in the fight, right? They're operating as our agents to tell us what it takes in their, to maintain structural integrity from an architectural engineering perspective, what the most safe, appropriate way to do it is. They give us that spec. We can decide if we want to put that out to bid, either as its own project, as part of another project. Like if we want to go down that road, they're going to give us a number. We're going to know that number, the real number is probably 45 to 55% more than their number. They're just going to give you the basic, this is what it costs for construction. And then we can make the call. But I feel like, that generates a spec. then we're
Yep.
bidding against a spec that's standardized. And that seems to be the most logical approach from my perspective.
Okay. Well, let's at least take a step on our side to get that done. In the meantime, we gotta, I guess it's closed off enough where it basically says stay the hell out. I'm wondering if we should have, I know Jared drives through there, or the village cops drive through there on a fairly regular basis, but I'm wondering if we should ask them to, specifically look at, make sure there's nobody hanging out in the gazebo. Nobody's, just sort of like they've been doing down at Bennett. They got a fence around the thing, and then basically the troopers and the village cops drive through there every so often. What do you guys asking the village cops to do that for us?
Can't hurt.
Yeah, I think they're already driving by now, so.
Yeah. All right. We'll reach out to them. All right, Elliot, how long do you think it would take to get engineer and architect to take a look at that?
We're going to do it as part of our comprehensive assessment. So it'll be done, once we award contracts to the firm, it'll be done within a month or two, I would hope. I'm thinking March, April for sure, barring any challenges with onboarding the firm.
Okay. All right. And in the meantime, they've got to face, the Friends of the Gazebo need to start working on funding sources, because funding sources don't, well, I shouldn't say that, but most times, they don't just write you a check. They, hey, what are you doing? You got to justify it. You got to figure out, like, if it's a fund me or GoFundMe thing, you got to get it all set up. So I would hope while we go off and figure out what it's going to take, that they can figure out, are there people interested in funding this? And, they could start with a range, right? Hey, we're looking to make sure we can secure up to $100,000. And, if we're not asking for the commitment right now, but they aren't asking for that immediate commitment, but they want to know that there are people that would step up to funding it.
Barry, one last thing is, since we can't do the funding through MEF, is it possible how else would we accept the funds as a district if they do raise it? So that's one thing that we'd have to think about too.
Okay. Yeah, Tim, maybe take a look at that, Laura.
You check with Julie and let them, because that's what we pay lawyers to answer that question.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Fine. Do a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion on the financials and warrants? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay. Oh, man. Yeah, the next. I wonder if we should hold this for till after the executive session. I think I really need to understand this resignation.
I have a couple questions too.
Yeah. All right. So does anyone on the board have an issue with us pulling this out of the agenda and putting it after the executive session?
No.
Okay. All right, Cheryl, if you can move that down for us. All right. Questions from the public? Cheryl?
We have none. I was just verifying. We don't have
Okay.
any.
Okay. Future agenda items. Review daily screener. Tenure review. Okay. All right. Anyone have anything for the future agenda items? Capital project updates, Elliot. When is first meeting each month? When does that start?
It can start in January if you'd like. I mean, we have work happening at the high school for the secure vestibule project over the break, so I should be able to hopefully report that that's substantially completed when we get back at the first January meeting. And if it's not, I will tell you why.
Okay.
Do we want just an update on that sort of thing though, or on the overall long-term capital project timeline?
We can do both. I mean, you know, we're again, the RFP or the proposals from the RFP are due on January 12th. So just after, I think, our next board meeting, and then we'll be spending the rest of January conducting primary interviews and then hopefully bringing forward some finalists in February. So yeah, we can touch on all of that as we go through.
Okay. And you guys are because I still, the one thing I'd like to get an update on is the projects that we had to modify, and we kind of split out some work. Are we, are we ready to finish those? Have they, have we done enough to finish those? So you don't need to answer it now, but that's one of the sort of open questions in my mind.
We had a call with BCA to discuss the scope changes from initial authorization to now, and then kind of a synopsis of the budget talks that you guys have had previously. Yeah, there's definitely some discussion that needs to be had there in terms of to what extent the board is going to commit to a phase 2 in the future, and how that informs how much of phase 1 we commit to in the present. So we can do a deeper dive into that in January as well.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Now we have we need a motion to go to executive session to discuss the some student information as well as some employees. Do we have a motion?
I'll
So
make a
moved.
motion.
I'll second.
All right. Any questions, comments, discussion? Favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any against? Very good. Okay.